What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Nicely timed text message coming in just as I was saying hi. Hey, somebody out there, Cujo's in the chat right now. Cujo, if you can hear me, just somebody give me a heads up or a thumbs up that you can hear me and I sound my volume's okay. When I was signing into the studio thing here, the volume bars didn't look like they were clicking up as high as normal. So just somebody give me a heads up before I start really diving in there. Hanging full of people here. Tuesday's going well, Cujo. Hopefully yours is too. Kind of a quiet day, just hanging out a little bit. Got the projections done. Another late night last night. No show yesterday. Was dying. Partied a little bit for the Super Bowl. Ended up going to my buddy Mike's house. Had a great time over there. I know they're not watching, but thank you to them. We're good? All right, cool. Yeah, I don't know what it was. The little blue bars for the audio were just not going where they were, so I panicked a little bit. Didn't want you guys thinking I was talking without turning on the microphone again. Again. But, yeah, fun Super Bowl. I thought it was a really good game. Obviously going to OT, pretty solid. Mahomes kind of solidifying that legacy. Travis Kelce nearly killing Andy Reid on the sidelines, which is always interesting to see, his image versus that on the field. That was kind of what was running through my head, is what did she think seeing that, But who cares? The best part of the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce thing was the video of them at the end of the night. And there's a good tweet going around with it with somebody pointed out that Jason Kelce in it. It's Travis and Taylor walking this way, and then into the frame, Jason Kelce stumbles. He's still wearing a wrestling mask. He's completely obliterated drunk. He almost walks into a tree. It's pretty fantastic. And the way the person framed it was, this basically looks like a trailer for that movie If with the Imaginary Friend, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, good Super Bowl overall. Good Deadpool trailer. What else? Had one of the best cookies I've ever had. Oh my God. I was, again, 3 sheets to the wind. We smoked a little bit, came back inside. Second half started. And there were these cookies that are no joke, that thick, that big. Somebody made them. I don't know who, but kudos. Whoever you are out there that made those cookies at Mike Brown's party, they were really good. So I sat there just watching the start of the second half. Me, my buddy Visco, and somebody else on our lap. Oh, our buddy Lenny, I think. All just sitting there silently, just stuffing cookie into our face for the first 5 minutes of the second half. But good times were had by all. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Super Bowl too. Anybody win anything? Any money-wise? Bets? Parlays? DFS? Etc.? I had a few DFS lineups in. Nothing hit. I threw together a stupid parlay that I knew wasn't going to hit for $5. Just to, have one of those crazy, well, if this happens and that happens and that happens. I did think it was going to go under. I thought it was going to be a low-scoring, kind of defensive type game. That was the theme of the lineups that I built and everything. But anyway, fun basketball slate up, 6 games. Duncan Robinson night, assuming he plays. A lot of Miami on the board. Miami's missing a bunch of pieces and parts today. Mike Conley looking pretty strong on both sites as just Conley keeps hitting the board in an is who he is kind of a way. He's just priced correctly / slightly low. So when we get these shorter slates with not as many great point guard options, it does tend to push him up a little bit. So we've been seeing him up there. Some key values, but some interesting guys too, like Jaylen Brown's there. Jason Tatum's right there. Wagner, Anthony Davis, KD, De'Aaron Fox. A lot of decent names hitting up near the top of the board. Again, sorted by DraftKings as usual, but a lot of those are crossovers, site to site. There's a few single digits in there. But looks like a good board. Blackman's here. What's going on, Blackman? Beantown? What's up, buddy? Emoji wave back to you. Couple good slates up, too. FanDuel's tournament didn't fill last night. I was surprised. They had I know DraftKings had that monster $4 100,000 a first contest going, so I assume most people dove into that. But FanDuel had a decent $5 up that was a big field, but it didn't quite fill. I'm curious to see whether tonight's does. They ran it back with another relatively inexpensive one with 40. So I'm curious to see how that one goes. But DraftKings, I think, went to 10 today. So trying to attract some of that Super Bowl money that people have on their accounts, I'm sure. So let's get into taking a look at the slate. Starting off game environment-wise, Beantown cashed with a 0. That's impressive. What are we talking about there, Beantown? I had a really good lineup in last night's basketball contest. It was chasing. It finished top 100. I think it ended up in like the 90s somewhere. But it was really everybody in that lineup hit except for Jay Crowder, who put up a 9 on FanDuel. So I had a lineup that anybody else in that spot probably was a top 10 lineup. But yeah, it was a good tournament last night. Profitable day. Played Kenny Loft. Oh, you had a cash with a 0 in your lineup, you mean? I got you. Yeah, that's probably was a similar looking kind of a lineup then. Yeah, there were a couple. We were on some of the projections yesterday. If you ran the projections yesterday, they should have come up fairly strong. A couple spots that were a little bit, didn't hit. Like Jay Crowder, I didn't have him through the roof or anything, but I had him as being, I think he was like 49 on FanDuel, and I had him paying off that salary. So obviously a couple misses like that become pretty key at that point. But I felt like we had a decent day. Kind of wish I was sitting there wishing I had done a show, because it was a lot of the stuff that I was like looking at. And I was like, man, wish I'd been on. I like sharing this stuff with you guys, you know. Anyway, Oklahoma City at Orlando. OKC favored by 3 on the road, 223.5 point total. Boston and Brooklyn. Boston favored by 8.5, 227 point total. Miami and Milwaukee. Milwaukee favored by 8 at home, 223 points. And again, the Heat missing a few key pieces. The Kings and the Suns. Suns favored by 5 at home, 245.5 in that one. Big total, biggest one on the board. Then it dips. Minnesota, Portland. Minnesota favored by 8.5 on the road, obviously. 214.5 in that one. So that one's a clunker. And then we go back up in the last game, Detroit at LA, at the Lakers. Lakers favored by 10.5, 241.5. So a couple decent targets. 2 really appealing games kind of later in the night. What time are those games? Yeah, 10 o'clock and 10:30, the Sacramento Phoenix game and the Detroit Lakers game. So definitely, good reason to leave some stuff open to be able to pivot around in those late games. Definitely some appeal back there. But the first couple games of the night are also not bad. There's definitely pieces and parts coming from each of those games. In terms of injuries, where'd that go? Oh, there it is. Probable. Giannis is probable. Pat Connaughton, for some reason, there's 2 T's on his name when I typed it. We'll update that real quick. Pat Connaughton, Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez, all probable. Seems like they're all going to go. Although, with the idea that several members of the Heat are out, maybe they do rest one of those guys. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Duop Reith is probable. Anthony Simons is probable. Bradley Beal, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, as usual, are probable. Key questionables are Kristaps Porzingis, Duncan Robinson, Scoot Henderson, and then Trey Lyles also popped up questionable later in the day, and I think actually somebody else did too. Jaden McDaniels is also questionable. I have to add that. Yeah, just leave it like that. It's fine. All right, so Jaden McDaniels also questionable. And then out, Xavier Tillman, Jaden Springer, Cam Johnson, Bismack Biyombo, Gordon Hayward, Jimmy Butler, Josh Richardson, Terry Rozier. Those are the 3 key members of the Heat that are out. Chris Middleton, Malcolm Brogdon, Shaden Sharp, Quentin Grimes, Isaiah Stewart, Max Christie, Cam Reddish, Jared Vanderbilt, and Gabe Vincent. So we've got some interesting pieces and parts. Some of these new teams working in new players. Should be interesting to see how it all snaps together. So going by win rate on DK, we'll jump into the position by position. Hit that like button down there. Hit the subscribe bell so you get notifications. There's 15 of you out there. I assume all 15 of you already get those notifications if you want them. I honestly don't subscribe to very many, or if any, YouTube channels, so I don't actually get notifications. I've literally never done that, but I always do hit the thumbs up when I watch a video or when I'm watching somebody stream, so at least do that. If you're into it, hit the subscribe bell. If you're into it, here's a link to Discord if you're not already in there. Let's do all this good stuff. Our sim partners, acemine.io. They sent me an agreement. I have to actually remember to do that. I have to sign that agreement and get those promo codes going for you guys. But yeah, acemine.io if you're looking for optimizers, sims. That's the place to check out. That's what powers our sim data here that we take a look at and talk about as to contextualize the slate. And that's where we look at the lineups at the end of the show. Pretty sure all you guys know that already. But anyway, getting into the guard by guard situation here. Starting at the top, Duncan Robinson. Looks like a very easy DraftKings option at 4,200. 0.82 per minute over the course of the season. The sample is not overly large with all of Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, and Josh Richardson out, especially over like the last 30 days. It was in the double-digit minutes for everybody. If we look at the full season going back to November 1st, 292 minutes for Duncan Robinson in that situation. Not terrible. He's only been at 0.66, so it's a little bit dicey to, consider him as an absolute, that is going to connect. But I've only got him at 0.69, and this is how strong he comes up. So I feel like there's, plenty of justification for it. The price is right. It's not a player that should make anyone really totally comfortable, but there should be plenty of opportunity. The usage is already at 18.9% for this season, and he's been in this situation. Yeah, a little bit less usage too, 15.9%. It's just a weird spot with some of those numbers. But I think it's justified based on, who he is overall. But he can put up a clunker like this, right? 32.8 minutes the other night, 17 FanDuel points. That is well within expectation for Duncan Robinson. So he does come with a little bit of not caution, not, warning to get below the field or anything like that. But just a little bit of, just be aware of who Duncan Robinson is and how easily he might disappoint that spot. But the math supports it. He owns less than the exposure that we're getting to on DraftKings. He came up at 58% in the top 150 with a 47% win rate. He's projected for ownership that's a solid like 25 points below that. So there's obviously room if you want less Duncan Robinson, if you're not comfortable with it, if you don't like it's not even taking a risk really at this price. I mean, it just works, right? The numbers, the math just works. But again, he isn't the best per minute guy. He isn't the best usage guy in this situation, at least over the course of this season so far. So if you wanted to trim that ownership, that exposure, and give back some of that to the field in place of another play, you've got room to do it. Let's put it that way. It's probably incorrect, but you've got room to do it. The Sims are telling us get ahead of the field on him pretty strongly. Nearly a 50% win rate, 58% ownership in the top 150. At the same time, Tyler Hero, 41% ownership in the top 150 and a 34.6% win rate, and a much more comfy, high usage, high per minute guy $7,800 on FanDuel, $6,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he comes up in 20% of the top 150 against the 17.89% win rate. I really like Tyler Hero as an option. I'm not saying that he's a better play than Duncan Robinson because of the price advantage that Robinson gives you. He's also got they got different positional flexibility on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, Tyler Hero only has shooting guard. So just very different plays. You can see on FanDuel too, the points per dollar is not as strongly in favor of Duncan Robinson as it is on DraftKings. On DK, 6.02 points per dollar, 5.59 for Tyler Hero. On FanDuel, it's just 100th of a point. But the discrepancy is here, obviously, in the win rate, in the popularity. On FanDuel, Robinson is owned right in this territory. This is like right with the field on Robinson on FanDuel. At 5,000, he's not the value that he is on DraftKings. And then Tyler Hero, also like right around those numbers. So I think on FanDuel, it's just more like be with the field on the top two Heat guys. Whereas on DraftKings, there's room to get out ahead. It's not as aggressive on Tyler Hero as it is on Dunk Robinson on DraftKings as far as this number being over the field. Where this is like 25 points, that's about 15 points ahead of the field. Again, with the projected ownership that we use for these sims. Malik Monk just landing there. 5,800 multi-guard eligibility, 31.2% winner on DraftKings, 34.6% of the top 150. On FanDuel, he's like 20-20, 19%, 22% win rate. 1.09 points per minute, 24% usage on the season in 29 minutes the other night. He went out and put up 37 FanDuel points. I'll take my shots with Malik Monk and get to that kind of upside. He's not all that popular today on FanDuel. Much more popular on DK. We're still ahead of the field. So we're talking about, be ahead of the field on Malik Monk on DraftKings. And then we're a solid 10-ish points ahead of the field on the FanDuel slate. So I like the upside of Monk there. And just getting pieces of that Sacramento-Phoenix game late is good. We've got Bradley Beal also sitting right here at 7,800. Shooting guard, point guard on FanDuel, 7,300. Same thing on DraftKings. 20.4% winner on DraftKings, 34% winner on FanDuel. So I like seeing we've got and De'Aaron Fox lingering down here. Smaller numbers on FanDuel, decent on DraftKings. So a lot of good pieces from that game coming up in Sims. I like when the math supports just wanting to get to those high total games. And I like when they come late in the night. Conley, again, just kind of priced really well for who Mike Conley is. 0.93 DraftKings points per minute on the season. 5,000. Point guard only. 5.67 points per dollar, giving you nearly a 28% win rate, coming up in 44% of the top 150 in that sim. That is running his ownership about double. On FanDuel, one of the more popular guys on the FanDuel slate. We're right about... No, the ownership is closer to the win rate, and we're a little bit ahead of the field there. About the same amount ahead of the field, as I said, we were for Tyler Hero on DraftKings. Try not to give away too many of these ownership numbers. It's important to talk about to contextualize like where we are against the field with that exposure in the top 150. Though when I added that, I had to be able to talk about what the projected ownership for it looks like a little. You guys get it. So Bradley Beal definitely playable at 78. I love the pricing on Beal. 0.95 FanDuel points per minute, 24% usage essentially on the season, 0.98 DraftKings points per minute. We know there's upside beyond that. any given slate, I do like the idea that he could take over, have his day. And if not, you're still getting around a point per minute from a pretty high-end player. So I really like the Bradley Beal option there in that game with the aggressively high total. I'm sure Booker's on here somewhere. Yeah, Booker right here. Looks about the same site to site, 9.75% win rate on FanDuel, 18% of the top 150 though. So I expect that means he's under-owned on the FanDuel site based on where we got him with this win rate and Sims. And then we got a little less of him on DraftKings, 8.9% win rate for 9,700. He's a better price play on FanDuel for one thing. 4.81 points per dollar versus it's actually 4.95, but 97 on DraftKings versus 97 on FanDuel with the higher cap. That's a better price play over there. But 6%. Let's see what he's projected for ownership wise. That's like right on his public projected ownership. So technically, there's a little bit of room on DraftKings to get out ahead of the field. If you wanted to say, I'm going to grab a few additional shares of Booker, even take it up to 10% against an 8.9% win rate is not an atrocious imbalance with the field more at this level. So I don't mind taking a couple extra shares of Devin Booker, and then he just looks very good on FanDuel. Fox doesn't look as strong on FanDuel. 12.79% winner on DraftKings. 19% of your top 150 over there. Looks very, very strong. At 8,000, that's a bargain for De'Aaron Fox. 1.25 DraftKings points per minute. Over the last 30 days. Got to get back to that. Last 30 days, he's been in the one. This reset? That was weird. I believe it was 1.22. No, excuse me, 1.14. I saw the second number. For some reason, it reset to a larger sample. 1.14 over the last 30 days in 500 minutes. So it's been a little bit of a downturn lately, but the season-long number 1.25. Over the course of all of last season, he was at 1.23. I've got him closer to what he's been over the last 30 days. I got him like right at 1.13 tonight. So it's slightly higher than what he's been over the last 30 days, but definitely closer to that territory than where he's been. It's a tight game against Phoenix. But there's plenty of points available. So we could definitely see this is like a low for De'Aaron Fox, I think. Not saying that the projection is like a low ball projection, but I'm saying percentage-wise, I think he's probably only, unless he goes out and completely, busts or comes out of the game, does something like this, 20 points in 32 minutes. That's obviously a disaster. But I think in general, there's really only upside beyond this, and we're getting to him a little bit ahead of the win rate over here. Getting to him a lot ahead of the win rate here. 19.3% exposure against a 12.7% win rate. He's projected at just almost half that ownership. A little bit more than half, I mean. So I think we want to be ahead of the field on De'Aaron Fox. On FanDuel, he's in the mid-single digits. There you go. Yeah, so we're ahead of the field here. His exposure is in this territory. So I think we want to be ahead of the field. Not crazy ahead of the field, but I think we do want to be ahead of the field on De'Aaron Fox here. Going back up the board a little bit. D'Lo, he's been playing well. 42.9 the other night in nearly 40 minutes, but around a point per minute. 1.03 on FanDuel, 1.07 on DraftKings for the season. 7,900 on FanDuel, both guard spots. 73 point guard only on DraftKings. Came up a little bit heavier on FanDuel. 32% winner. 19% exposure. It's probably pretty popular. Yeah, it's pretty popular. I exposures. This is under the field. On DraftKings, it's not quite the same. Still the most popular projected Laker on the DraftKings slate. We're well below the field. Oh, wait. Sorry. Was that the right? Yeah. We're well below the field on D'Lo in that top 150 there. The win rate is closer to his ownership, but that win rate is still below his projected ownership. So he's really not... I think it's coming up as a play that you want to have, considering the 16.8% win rate, but it looks like the public is out a little bit over their skis on that one. So I think maybe you pull back shares of D'Lo a little. It's a good spot. Detroit, LA, there's a lot of points on the board in that one. Detroit's obviously terrible. Between all their guys, you could easily see D'Lo being the one that, gets run even in a blowout. Play a little bit extra, Not on old legs like LeBron or questionable legs like AD. But, yeah, I think we want to be a little bbit below the field there on D'Lo. See what you guys are talking about. I haven't looked at the chat in a little bit. Do you anticipate them dusting off Jovic for some run with Milwaukee's height? Yeah, I haven't projected for some minutes. I forget how many. Isn't like the 10-12 minute range? I have him exactly between that at 11 right now. I just kind of threw some scrap minutes down the board for some of those guys. I balanced basically a 7-man. And then Jovic, Kane, and Robinson getting some scrap minutes at the bottom. But yeah, I could see it, and I could see it going up to 16, somewhere in that territory. Obviously, if he starts anything like that, it's going to change the equation. He is dead min on DraftKings. Right now, he wouldn't be coming up on DK, I don't think, because he's projected in the single digits with the 11 minutes that I gave him. But if we find more time... Yeah, I was going to talk about Dinwiddie in a sec. I'm giving Dinwiddie more minutes than at least what... one of the sites that I checked was giving him. I don't know that he hit the board. We are on guards, and we haven't talked about him yet, so I'm sure he's... Yeah, didn't really hit the board. But I gave him 26. I feel like that's pretty fair. He's playing 30 minutes. He's an NBA starter, talent-wise. I don't know necessarily that he jumps into the starting lineup. I know they were talking about using him in a 3-guard set with Reeves and I forget who else. But I think there's minutes there for Dinwiddie. I don't know that they necessarily come tonight. But I saw him a lot lower in other places. Not that he hit the board at all, though. At 26 minutes, 5,300. He only came up 0.31% in basically one of the top 150 on DraftKings at 5,000 both guard spots. He came up at a 0.07% win rate. Didn't land in the top 150. A little more room for Reeves on both sides. 8% winner, but came up under that. Probably a little too popular on DraftKings. Same thing on FanDuel, actually. 9% winner. Got to him well less than that. So probably Reeves might be a little bit overpopular for his price against the position today. Definitely playable. Definitely should have some. But I don't know that we want to go to the field to the field's number on Reeves either. Which is tough because, again, I do want to get to shares of both of those late games. Between the two, Sacramento-Phoenix is much better. It's got a 5-point spread versus 10.5-point spread. I think we all assume that the Lakers are going to wax Detroit. So that's a little bit of why the Lakers plays are probably coming up a little bit over-owned. Cam Thomas looking pretty good from one of the few guys so far from that game. Boston, Brooklyn, I don't think we've talked about anybody. I know Jalen's here. Yeah, there's Jalen. So on the Brooklyn side, Cam Thomas just getting starters run lately. Good scorer, scoring-dependent guy for sure, but a 29.7% usage rate over the entire course of the season. A lot of that in the second unit. Over the last, let's call it 30 days, Oh, this is a mess, though. I don't want to sit here putting guys in and out. Over the last 30 days in its raw form, Cam Thomas has been at 1.05 FanDuel points per minute, 1.10 DraftKings points per minute in 447 minutes, 910 possessions. Let's just try and do real quick here. Lonnie. If we chop that down to 146 minutes, 295 possessions with Dinwiddie and Lonnie Walker out, 0.94, 0.99. So he's in this general territory, point per minute-ish. But again, very scoring dependent. Doesn't do a whole hell of a lot else. But there is definite high-end upside on the right night, on a solid heat check guy. Jaden Ivey is kind of an interesting piece from the Detroit side of that game, but he's another one that's coming up. 18% win rate, just 13% exposure on FanDuel. 15.2% win rate, just 2.6% exposure on DraftKings. That's... His projected ownership is almost exactly that number. I do think there's a little bit of additional room there. If you want to grab shares of one of the, some piece of that game, I do think Ivy makes some sense to be that, and the 15.2% win rate justifies it. On FanDuel, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, there's a lot of playability there since he came up 13% of the time in the top 150. The fact that it was only 2.6% in the top 150 on DraftKings is a little bit concerning, but I do think that means there's a little bit of additional room there because the field's like here. So if you took it up to, you could triple this, 6-8%. Half the field and be fine. Jalen with a lot of upside going against Brooklyn here. 15% win rate on FanDuel, came up 30% of the time in the top 150. Same thing on DraftKings, 14.2, came up 29% of the time. Just another guy, just kind of at a good price. 8,000 small forward shooting guard on FanDuel, 7,700 same positioning on DraftKings. For a 1.10, 1.13 guy, that's pretty solid pricing. Just puts him, it's kind of like Conley. Just puts him in the is who he is range. Last year, 1.16 per minute. Actually got him a little slightly below these numbers. Got him 1.08 on FanDuel. It's closer to what he's done over the last 30 days. But I like the spot for Jalen. SGA premium pay-up option. Didn't really pop on FanDuel. Came up a decent amount on DraftKings. 13% winner. Another guy, though, half that in terms of the exposure. Means there's some room there. Just a pricey pay-up type guy, but always willing to pay for shares of SGA. Very, very cheap options. $3,500 Cole Anthony. I didn't notice that earlier. That's exceedingly cheap. He's 51 on FanDuel, didn't hit the board at all. He's 35 on DraftKings. Landed 13% winner, 15% of the top 150. Very relevant piece over there. Played 30 minutes, put up 28.7 FanDuel points the other night. I don't have him at nearly at that level. He's played 23 and change for the season. I just have him getting 20 minutes, and he's hitting the board pretty hard on DraftKings at that price. $30 in that one, 19 the game before that, 14, 11, 12 going back in time. It's just a really low price. I think this is somewhat effective. I don't think he's overprojected here by any means. Alexander Walker, also coming up as a price-based play, 3,300. Shooting guard, small forward. Potential to pick up some minutes. 13% win rate. Just came up at a 6% exposure in our top 150. But again, it is a very good game environment. It's a spot we want to be getting to. He's projected right around where the win rate is. More like what his top 1% rate there is. And just came up at like, a little bit under half that. But again, another guy, 3,300, I do think there's a little bit of price-based value baked into that. And I do think you can get a little bit ahead of the number here. Somewhere between this exposure and where the field is at is probably okay. Late Q tag on Ant and Jaden McDaniels. I suppose Conley will be next on this back-to-back. That's fun. I saw the Jaden McDaniels. I hadn't seen the Ant one. Okay. Thanks, Steven. That's helpful. I just hadn't noticed that it was really more about the DraftKings price than the projection. I figured the projection was about right. But yeah, I just didn't realize he had dipped to 3,500 on DraftKings. Aloysius is here. What's going on? Insane Pump. Favorite DraftKings plays of the day. It's kind of what we're talking about. Very top of the board is Duncan Robinson. He's super chalky. Very highly owned, but came through the model very, very strongly. Came through the Sims very strongly. Looks like he's universally in that territory across the industry. Just a good chunk of value at 4,200 on the DraftKings slate. I gave a big asterisk with him that he is a low end per minute guy in this situation. He's a low end usage guy in this situation, so it's not the most comfy of plays. It's like getting to some of those lower end Knicks sometimes when it's just like, well, they're probably going to play like 40 minutes, so you got to stick them in the lineup, but they could still come up and disappoint you. That's who Duncan Robinson is, but the price is just super effective at the positioning, so you got to go there. We're just sorted to guards here, but I do like Malik Monk, and Tyler Hero is kind of more obvious from that Heat squad, but just more of a good mid-range play. Mike Conley looks good. These are just guards, but there's a few of them there. Insane Pump. Welcome. Christopher's here, looking like cheap Miami and Giannis the stock chalk build today. Yeah, we'll see where Giannis came up, but I assume, especially with SGA, he landed as relevant on and playable on DraftKings, less so on FanDuel, but that's one of the expensive players down. Nobody else in the 5-digit range here. Let's see. We'll jump back. So let's see. We did get a fair share of Tatum as a pay-up on DraftKings. AD at 18.3. So it might not be Giannis, actually. I don't necessarily see him. There he is. 8.5%. We got to him ahead of that win rate for 11.7 on DraftKings. That puts us well ahead of the field. So, yeah, the answer is probably to your question there, yes, that is a good option. If you're building one lineup, that is a very good selection as a superstar player who's not going to be very popular, who came up with a win rate that is more than double his projected popularity in this sim, and a top 150 exposure that is 4 times as much. So yes, Giannis looks like a very, very good pay-up option on DraftKings today. On FanDuel, not as much, 11.8, 1% win rate, 3% of the top 150. Playable, you can throw a dart. These are probably, these 3% in the top 150 are probably up near the top of the top of. These 3% are near the top of the top 150. Same thing with these too. It's, his lineups tend to excel in the ones where he hits. So yeah, I think Giannis is a strong pay up, but some of these guys did come up with more exposure for a little bit less money. Probably just clicked together a little bit better. The $10,100 for AD came up 21% of the time in the top 150, 18.3% win rate. He looks like one of the better Lakers options today, but that puts you right around the field on AD, where you would have a big advantage on the field with Giannis, right? So there's a give and take there. Let's zoom through some of the other guards. I know I've been kind of rambling. Honestly, while I was doing the projections, I reached over and just absentmindedly took a huge hit off the bowl. And normally I don't do that like that close to jumping on a show. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit rambly. So AE came up questionable. So we'll keep an eye on that one. He was coming up a little bit on DraftKings, and we were getting ahead of the win rate. 8,500 is a pretty good price for his general upside. 1.23 DraftKings points per minute on the season. A couple pieces and parts out for them. So if he's out there, I think we're getting a normal Anthony Edwards kind of a night. We just got to keep an eye on his status. But looks very good for who he is on DraftKings. On FanDuel, just 3%. You can play him. Probably not your best option at shooting guard or small forward for 91, though. Cade looks better at the point guard, shooting guard, 8,400, 17% win rate. Came up less than that in our top 150. We're I think under the field pretty much universally, outside of like Anthony Davis, who came up around the field. But we're getting a lot of under the field numbers on this Detroit LA game that does look appealing, I gotta say. Yeah, 17% on, 7% on FanDuel against a 17% win rate. The ownership is more in this territory. So we're well below the field on Cade, who, again, does look pretty decent. 29% usage on the season, put up 45 in 35 minutes the other night. He's only 78 on DraftKings, landed in almost 5% of the top 150 against a 12.5% usage rate. Again, this means there's room there. You're just trending back up toward the field on a guy who is just a very good player, very good option. But the way the Sims fell, he came up a little bit shy in the top 150 against that public exposure. There's better under-owned options. Interesting how that's breaking down today. Booker, we talked about. Monte Morris, 4,100 on FanDuel, landed all right. It's just a 15-minute projection. 4.67% the top 150, nearly a 5% winner. And then on DraftKings, he's the dead min. So with just a 14-point projection, 10% of the top 150, 8.75% win rate. It's not great in terms of the lack of overall minutes. But, I mean, they did go out and get him. There's at least the idea that he could walk into more. He played 18 the other night. So technically I could give him another couple of minutes. I'd probably take... Maybe that's the answer. I should move Alexander Walker down and give 3 more minutes to Monte Morris. I might do that. I might put them both at 18 instead of 21-15. What did Null played 24 the other night though. Who didn't get run? McLaughlin. No, McLaughlin got 4. I was low end at the top, that's why. I'm going to wrestle with that one a little bit. See if I can find another couple of minutes for Monte Morris in here somewhere. I think it's justified to get him up to 18, considering that's what he played the other night. Again, that was in just looking at the minutes breakdown. Gobert only played 33. Anthony Edwards played 32. Cat played 27. Conley only played 24. I'm not looking at the, what actually went down in that game. I'm just looking at the minutes report. And then Alexander Walker went 24. Morris played 18. Jordan McLaughlin played 4. And then they even got garbage time probably minutes for Josh Minott and Dacian Nix. Just 2 minutes each for those guys. So there was just a available little pool of minutes that drove that up. But I do think there's a little bit more available for Monte Morris. Excuse me. Yeah, and that means they've probably got him right around 14-ish minutes. Steven, 13 minutes, somewhere in that territory. 0.85 for the season on FanDuel, 0.84 on DraftKings. It's just kind of a guess at where they might want to, slot him into how they're running guys out there. Mikal Bridges, another guy priced just right on what he's been delivering lately. Exactly a point per minute on the nose on FanDuel, 25% usage. On DraftKings, 1.03 per minute. 7,400 shooting guard, small forward, perfectly playable. 8% win rate, 8.6% win rate, 6% exposure in DraftKings. On FanDuel, we did get to him ahead of the win rate. 22% exposure in the top 150. Just 7,700 shooting guard, small forward is pretty valuable. 15% win rate. One of the few guys from the early games. And he is projected for, ownership that's about a third of this. A little bit less than a third. Excuse me, a little bit more than a third. Grayson Allen, playable, is who he is. Came up lighter on him than the field in both. Austin Reeves also came up that way. 2% exposure against the 9% win rate on FanDuel. 4% exposure against an 8% win rate. That entire game is coming up that way, that Detroit LA game. It just looks like a spot that you want to have some, and they'll mix into open spots in your lineups. But the other late game, the Sacramento Phoenix game, is more appealing. Just in terms of the exposures that we got, almost universally, and where we are against the field in that game. So our Sims are favoring that game pretty strongly. Differentiated guys, Kevin Huerter, speaking of, 27% win rate, 32% exposure. Anthony Simons in the Minnesota-Portland game that isn't all that appealing in terms of the game environment, but does have some pieces coming up. Simons, 16% win rate, 12% exposure. He's questionable, so keep an eye on that. Malik Beasley, nobody's favorite. Just 20 minutes, 4,400 at... that was Pat Bev. I was like, wait a minute. 31 minutes, 5,500. Small forward shooting guard. That makes more sense. 2% win rate, 0.67. It was Pat Bev that I saw the win rate for. 12% win rate, 6% exposure. Played 19-7 the other night, put up 14 FanDuel points. This is about what I would expect from Pat Bev. 14.5% usage over the course of the season. I don't know what he got usage-wise in that first game, but this was with Philly. Just a low usage guy. A very good real-life basketball player for what he does on the court in his 20-ish minutes a night. But I don't know that I really need to go out of my way for that one, especially when it comes up below the win rate, which means that people are getting to him a little bit. Yeah, he's projected for a fair amount of ownership on FanDuel. His ownership number is several points higher than that win rate. I don't love that Pat Bev spot. Nobody else really, as far as differentiated guys site to site. Dame, 10% winner, 20% exposure. That's one. Glad I caught that. That means we want to be decently ahead of the field on Dame. Yeah, about doubling up the field on Dame. So I do think it's a good idea. Go grab these under-owned Bucks stars. Not like the on paper best spot of the slate game environment wise, but remember the Heat are nowhere near at full strength. Milwaukee's still without Chris Middleton. So I do think there's some justification for, in our Sims especially, get over the field on Dame on the FanDuel slate pretty comfortably. On DraftKings, he just came up 2.7% winner, 2.67% exposure. He's playable, but he's the same price on DK as he is on FanDuel. That makes a big, big difference, obviously. Glad I caught that one there. Let's jump to forwards. Been talking about guards forever. Duncan Robinson still at the top of the board, even when we switch over to forwards. Dennis is here. Does anyone else wonder what the person who wrote the kid's song, Daddy Finger, Where Art Thou? was thinking when they wrote the lyrics. Where are you? Where did I get Where Art Thou? I was watching Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet yesterday. That's probably where I got it. I think the Where Art Thou probably seals in that I am being influenced by that hit that I took. Yeah, I don't know, done. Travis Wyndham's here. Jaime Jaquez, a bunch of minutes. 6% winner on FanDuel, 6% exposure. 28% winner on DraftKings, 28% exposure. Pretty straightforward. 4,500 both forward spots on the DraftKings slate. Just looks like good chalk. 5,900 on FanDuel, small forward only. 0.8 per minute in the... Oh, damn it. I got to start opening multiple tabs of Wowie so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Come back to the full year sample for these guys. No Jimmy. No Rozier. And no J. Rich. Full season for these guys. Jaquez, 397 minutes in this situation, or essentially this situation. 0.80 per minute on FanDuel. Puts him exactly at what he's been for the season. So it doesn't really change him. We've just got some potential minutes for him. He's been playing on 29.5 per night. Got him at 34 tonight. Did put up a big disappointment there in 28 minutes the other night. I don't think it was a spot that anybody is necessarily on, but only 10 FanDuel points. That's a little bit rough in 28 minutes. That's tough to do. Tatum looks like a much stronger option on DraftKings. 25% win rate, 25% exposure. On FanDuel, half that. 12% winner, 10% exposure. He's 10-2 on FanDuel, both forward spots, 95 on DraftKings. That said, one of the better overall, per minute guys, one of the higher end stars on the slate. You're getting more Tatum on FanDuel than you're getting Giannis. And you're getting about double the Tatum that you are on, that you're getting Giannis on DraftKings. Obviously, Giannis a much more expensive proposition. But Tatum is coming up. That's right around his ownership. It's a little ahead of the ownership. We're a little bit beyond the field there, but not by much. Where again, it's a different stratosphere as far as the price. But again, when we're talking about pay-up options, Giannis is just way under this exposure rate in terms of his projected ownership. So the advantage, just booking around the field of Tatum, is not necessarily as advantageous as taking a position on Giannis. I would want to try and have around the field on Tatum at the same time as I'm taking a position on Giannis. Not necessarily going to be in the same lineups, unfortunately. But, between, as far as like, what do I like? I kind of like this Giannis spot, even though it's a sub 10% win rate. It's not great by comparison to these win rates. But we know what the true ceiling is. Just 30 minutes the other night, put up 78 FanDuel points. 1.66 on the season. So, I do like the idea of that position being available on DraftKings. It's not there on FanDuel, not nearly. Jason Tatum, way, way better play on FanDuel than Giannis is. Overall, Tatum is a better play for himself on DraftKings. Jonathan Isaac, handful of minutes. Good per minute guy. Put up 33 in 25 minutes the other night. Let's see what he can do in 20 tonight. Got him right around a point per minute, a little bit below a point per minute actually tonight, so below his current season rates, more in line with his last 30 days. On FanDuel, he's 4,700, landed in the top 150, 18% of the time. On DraftKings, he came up 21% of the time against a 24% win rate. He's only 3,400. He's got center eligibility on DK. Makes him kind of interesting. You can flex him around the board a little bit. Not my favorite option on the board necessarily, but the math does support it. The numbers are there, and the salary is very low. It's just a price-driven option on DraftKings, if nothing else. It's FanDuel at that 47 small forward, power forward with all the other forward options available. That one gets to me a little bit. I think that's why he's coming up less than his win rate over there. But there's support for getting to some shares of it. Franz with much more secure upside minutes didn't come up nearly as much for 8,200, nearly double the price. Both forward spots. On DraftKings, though, he came up nearly the same. 24% exposure to him. Actually came up a little bit more in our top 150 than Isaac did. He's 71 over there, 19.8% win rate, 1.11 per minute over the course of the season. Projected at 5.35 points per dollar. One of the better overall small forward plays on the board. And one of the few without any kind of positional flex. Right? The only other small forward only guy looking down the board with any kind of win rate on DraftKings is $4,100 Jaden McDaniels, who might not play. So as far as the small forwards with no positional flex, you're really talking only about Franz Wagner as in terms of relevant players, which is interesting. When we pull up the Sims, we'll probably see a little straight line of Wagner shares in there somewhere. Keegan Murray, playable on both sites, 20.8% winner on FanDuel, 15% exposure in the top 150. Same exposure in the top 150 against 18% win rate on DraftKings. Perfectly playable, 0.82 per minute on the season. Got him at right at that level tonight. 0.83. Just another guy, too, from that Sacramento Phoenix game. Didn't come up nearly as strong on FanDuel. Murray just 3.3% winner, 2.6% of the top 150 on FanDuel, but at 5,100, power forward, 21% winner on or 21% exposure on DraftKings against a 17% win rate. I think we can get there, and that puts him probably ahead of the field. Yeah, it puts us a solid 5-ish points ahead of the field. What's up, throwbacks? How you doing, bud? Good to see you. Steven's note is just lingering there about Monte Morris now. Got to decide what to do with that. It's not going to be at all like a key spot on the slate, I don't think. But that's one of those ones that's just going to burrow its way into my brain over the next hour and a half, trying to figure out whether it should be 14 minutes or up to 18 minutes. And it won't matter at all. What else we got here? LeBron. Where's LeBron? 9% winner on FanDuel. Just came up in 4% of the top 150, though. Again, that Detroit Lakers game, everybody is coming up below the field. Same thing on DraftKings. He looks like a better option on DraftKings, 9,600 versus 10-1 on FanDuel, both forward spots on both sites. 13.9% winner on the DraftKings slate. Came up at 9% exposure. I guarantee he's projected for more than that. That's a little bit more than half the projected exposure on DraftKings. On FanDuel, same thing. So again, it's almost exactly the same situation with all of these guys. LeBron is very, very playable. I would say I do want to have LeBron shares on both sites, even more so on DraftKings with that win rate. But I think undercutting the field is getting a lot of justification from our Sims here. AD center only, huh? That way he's not on the board here. Yep. Paolo Banchero looks pretty good on FanDuel. 11% exposure against the 21% win rate. There's a little bit of room for flexibility there depending on where you want to be on him. Jalen, who I talked about before, but again, looks very, very strong at 32% on FanDuel against a 15% win rate. Puts us, I'm sure, well ahead of the field there on Jalen. KD as another piece of Sacramento Phoenix, 25% winner, 22% of the top 150. Another very good pay-up option. Looks a little bit better on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's very playable, though. 15.6% winner, 20.6% exposure. That puts us... Oh, this is FanDuel, that's why. I was like, below the field? That can't be right. Puts us a little bit ahead of the field on KD. But I like that spot, and I think there's room to grab even a few additional shares 1.32 per minute on DraftKings, 1.30 on FanDuel for the season. Slow-mo, not at all relevant to the FanDuel slate. Pretty relevant at 3,400 on DraftKings, though. 19-minute projection. If we get some of those pieces and parts missing from Minnesota, that could only go up. So at 34, there's room for Kyle Anderson. He's 52 on FanDuel. I mean, it's a totally different play. Low usage guy, medium points per minute output. But you can expect in the right spot a point per minute type night gets you a decent amount of upside, and at price on DraftKings, that could become killer if he sees even mid-20s minutes. He's already looking really strong, 13.39%. He came up probably less than the field. Yeah, he's owned not through the ceiling, but he's owned at like triple this exposure in the projections. So the field is there, and the field will only get there more. But I think if he does find more minutes, I think it just makes him a more secure piece of good chalk. Like I would just ride up the ladder on slow-mo ownership if the field goes up, if the projected minutes go up. I think there's good justification there for just following the field because the security of the chalky play just gets better and better. It'll hit a break point on FanDuel. Like if you gave him like 36 minutes, he'd obviously look okay on FanDuel as well, but we're not going to that level. So I don't think he gets there on FanDuel. Just priced correctly for what the opportunity might be rather than what he looks like right now on FanDuel. So it doesn't look good on FanDuel. Looks good and potentially very strong on DraftKings. So we're about a third of the field's exposure right now. But again, as that trends upward, I would probably make an effort to maybe catch up with the field a little bit because he just becomes a better play with more time. Edwards we touched on before. Alexander Walker we touched on before. And keep in mind, Mott Conley was one of the top players on the board on both sites from Minnesota as well. Caleb Martin showing a little bit of value. Plenty of minutes there for him. 5,000 power forward only on the DraftKings slate. 10.2% winner. 11% exposure in the top 150. On FanDuel, even stronger. 5,600 both forward spots. 20.6% winner and 26% exposure. One of the better overall pieces there. They were about double the field there. I like that. One of the few guys that came up, I think, sneaky in that game. Not sneaky because he is projected for a decent chunk of ownership, but came up with us getting nicely out of the field on him. I like that spot. Mikhail Giannis we talked about. KP, still questionable last I saw. Doesn't really matter to the FanDuel slate that much. Definitely has upside, and we got to him ahead of the win rate, which means we're ahead of the field. 8,700 is a good price for a 1.25 per minute option like KP. It's just, I don't know that we see any kind of extended minutes beyond the 32 that I've got him projected for. They're not inclined to really run him into the ground. It should be a game that they can win handily. So I don't really see a huge true ceiling for KP. There's ceiling beyond what he's projected. 31 minutes the other night, put up 45 FanDuel points. It's about where we're looking. 7 to 10 points on top of this projection, I think, is about right. That puts us, standard deviation-ish. Standard deviation and change. So I think he's playable on DraftKings. 7.8% winner, 6% of the top 150. He's not a priority on either site, though. And still questionable, might not go. Which begs the question, where is Al Horford priced? Big Al is 5,200 on DraftKings, 57 on FanDuel. We'll see where we... Oh, no, he should be on this board. He's got power forward on DraftKings. Right now, Big Al's just down here. No love on DraftKings, no love on FanDuel. If he steps into that starting lineup, if Porzingis doesn't play, he might see a little bit of an uptick, but I think he's still, it's another spot where he's just correctly priced for what might happen. So I don't know that it becomes a priority. texted in, we saw that somebody mentioned Edwards a questionable. How's Fontecchio not popping more? He's cheap and starting now. Let's see where he's at. Oh, there he is. He did play 32 the other night. Maybe I owe him a couple of minutes. Let's see. He went 32 in his first action with Detroit. Ivy, Cunningham, and Duran all played at their regular 30s. Ajer Thompson went his usual 27. Shake, Muscala, Moody played, Sasser, Wiseman. They've got some other parts there now too, though, that may or may not work into the equation here. So that's how I did it. I just went the usual distribution of minutes for Cade, Ivy, and Jalen Duran in the mid-30s. I give Ajer Thompson basically his usual run. He plays about 27 minutes a night. I've got him at 26. I've got Fontecchio also at 26. He might start, but I do think that there's minutes that need to be applied to at least Evan Fournier, potentially Malachi Flynn as well. I think those guys see a little bit of time. I didn't actually give Flynn any minutes. I just went like 16s through the group of Sasser, Brown, Muscala, Wiseman, and then Fournier and Shake Milton at 12. I do think that there's room for Fontecchio to play more, especially if he's in that starting lineup. That's something to watch for sure. I could maybe give him, I don't know that I'm going to put him into the 30s, but I might try and find him a couple additional minutes. I'll at least flag him to take a look at. That was a good question, Mike. Thank you. I appreciate you pointing that out. Oh, that wasn't Mike. Sorry. Who asked that? Eric. Thank you, Eric. Mike says, my opto is popping Troy Brown. Not sure how comfortable I am with that. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that either, my friend. I don't think he came up at all for us. Oh, no, excuse me. There he is. Nope, he's the Deadman price. That's why. Deadman, 16 minutes. Like I said, when I was running through those minutes, there is flux in those minutes. But at the Deadman, there's not a lot of ceiling there. But he doesn't need a lot of ceiling. He played 19 the other night. Yeah, Mike says. I'm not comfortable with it either, Mike. I'm with you there. 14.9% usage on the season, 0.74 per minute. That's not one of the... it is there because it's price driven. That said, that per minute number is high. That per minute number is a little high. Let me pull that back up in the other model. Boy, he's popular too. Holy shit. I think there's justification for taking away the per minute bonus that I gave him. I'm going to take a look at that one. Keep an eye on it in the projections. I don't love it. Right now, it does definitely come up at 3,000 with just 16 minutes, but I think this is a little bit high in terms of the per minute number. It's in like the 0.9 territory. So we could definitely get a little bit lower than that. I still think he would hit the board, though. That's the unfortunate part. Right now, 16% win rate, 10% of the top 150. That's well below the field on him. So I'm going to call that one not necessarily good chalk. It looks like he's a little popular, and that is the theme of that Detroit-LA game this entire time. Right? He just fits right into that same narrative that we've been seeing, that the sim has been telling us, that that's a spot you can get him. He's a building block for sure with that price tag. But I think below the field, almost universally in that Detroit-LA game, so far, I really think it's only going to be AD that comes up as like a strong option in terms of where we want to position against the field. Which is surprising. I started the show saying I like that spot. I want to get to it. It's high-end, potentially high-octane situation. Yeah, that is not comfy, though, that Troy Brown run. And again, I just question what everybody's minutes look like with those new different pieces and parts they got to move around, and nobody outside of the primary guys who are already just getting their are what they are minutes. None of those guys is necessarily like a development piece, not to any real extended degree. So, yeah, I'm glad that the Sims came up the way they did for a lot of these Detroit pieces. Let's put it that way. That said, though, again, 18% win rate on FanDuel, came up 22% of the time, so he did actually land a little bit on FanDuel at 3,600, 100 over the dead min. But it's not really my favorite spot. Eric's asking about Dennis Schroeder. I don't love targeting that Boston team when it doesn't really come through. He looks okay. It's like an is who he is kind of a spot for Schroeder. Let's see where he came up in the Sims. I know we didn't talk about it. Here he is. Yeah, didn't really hit at all on FanDuel. Is who he is kind of a spot. 22-point projection, 4,800. You're right. He did put up a good game the other night. 26.5 minutes, 34.6 FanDuel points. It's been a 0.94 DraftKings per minute player on the season. He's only 4,800. I think there's some playability there, but it's not simming through like a priority. Yeah, Eric, I used to work over there. I was there for several years, from like their second year through their fourth year, basically, I guess. As of last year, as of like 2 years ago during the summer, I was no longer a full time. And then beginning of baseball season last year, basically, I stopped doing shows at all over there or doing anything with them. Yeah, I was running customer service over there, and I was doing tons of articles and a lot of shows. So that is where you saw me, my friend. Glad you found us here. Trey's here. What's up, Trey? Yo, right back at you, buddy. How was the gym? I assume Trey's just getting back from the gym. Yeah, Mike, exactly. Just that's what those $3,000 guys are. It's just the piece to make other things work. It's the cog in the machine. It's the in my suitcase analogy, which is not my suitcase analogy. It's stolen from famous math problem. But in the suitcase analogy, he's the little travel size toothbrush that you just throw in there. It's extremely valuable on your trip. There you go. Helps you fit your shoes and your snorkel into your suitcase as well. Oh, that Terry. Yes, Steven. Sorry, buddy. I'm that Terry. Now Steven's going to leave and block me on Twitter. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that, Eric. Glad you found us here. We're doing this pretty much every day. I know we've taken more days off for basketball, just here and there, but pretty much every day. Projections are here every single day at rotoscouts.com. Free projections, 100% free. The Sims are from acemind.io. If you're not familiar with us and haven't been over there, we'll take a look at those in just a second. But those guys run an optimizer. They run Sims. Really good partner site. We'll have some promo codes coming up for them. I know I keep threatening that. I really got to get that done. And yeah, my site is rotoscouts.com. Projections are free. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle for any news and information, etc., etc. We'll be here for baseball all summer. Basketball through the end of the season. That's going to get fun and sticky once we get to building lineups for baseball, talking about baseball, projecting baseball. At least there's no like last minute, or not a lot of anyway, last minute shit for baseball. But doing that and basketball at the same time is going to get interesting. Anyway, let's wind down the forwards and jump to the centers. Otherwise, we're going to be here until lock. So we're down in this territory. KP again, more playable on DraftKings, minorly playable on the FanDuel slate, may not go. Trey Lyles also may not play. He was looking all right on FanDuel. Another piece of Sacramento Phoenix that comes up pretty strong. 15% exposure against an 11% win rate on FanDuel for 45 if he plays. On DraftKings, we just got to him 1% of the time. Power forward and center for 4,000, 77.72% win rate. Did he get super popular on DraftKings? What happened? He's owned a lot more than that on DraftKings, but it is still in the single digits. It's right around what this win rate is. I do think there's maybe a little bit more room there if you want to take that value off the board, but I think there's probably just there are positional blockers to that value. Like you're just going to get much more $3,400 Jonathan Isaac, for example, there. And then some of these other cheap $3,000 guys, or you'll get your pay up AD spot there. This is a biggie. If McDaniels doesn't go, that's a lot of percentage off the board. 37.1% win rate right now, 36% of the top 150 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, won't be a problem. 4,100 small forward only, 5.3%. He was playable to, decent on DraftKings, but he looks like a key piece right now on FanDuel and potentially might not play. That's one to watch. It's also one to watch in terms of this atrociously bad per minute number, the fairly low usage, the fact that in 25 minutes the other night he put up 16 FanDuel points. Another guy who does come with a pretty firm asterisk. But if he's out there, I think the value holds. I think the minutes hold. Cat, not really showing much. A little bit of exposure on DraftKings in our 150. 8,000 power forward and center. I expect he probably lands next to AD a good amount of the time. Just a 5% win rate, but we got to him a little bit more than that. There's Fontecchio. Again, we'll keep an eye on him. Maybe we find him an additional few minutes. If Zinger doesn't go, Hauser would probably see a little bit of additional run. But I think it is Horford who's going to step into the starting lineup again. We'll keep an eye on that as well. But it's, 24 goes up to 28-ish, I think, for Al in that situation. Hauser picks up a little bit. The down bench guys all pick up a little bit. Jay Crowder, the guy who burnt that lineup on me last night, landing as a pretty strong option again on FanDuel, 4,600. Power forward and small forward, just projected for 20 points, but a lot of run. He's another guy, extreme low usage, very low points per minute. Comes with a major asterisk. Like I said, he scored 9 FanDuel. This is the game right here. 22.9 minutes last night, scored 9 FanDuel points. Not ideal, but does math out as a good option again. Not on DraftKings. 0.44% win rate, 0% of the top 150 on DraftKings. And then a 7% winner hiding down here, Dorian Finney-Smith, 4,500. He's playable on FanDuel. He's not a priority. Let's get to the centers. What has happened over the last little bit in the news? Anything? It's 5:30 already. Jeez. Wednesday. A lot of Wednesday news. There weren't a lot of, outside of the pieces that landed, Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards landed late on the questionable list. There weren't really a ton of questionable guys, so we're not necessary, unless some of the probables scratch from Milwaukee or from LA. But we weren't necessarily waiting on a ton of news for this. Thank you, Steve. I forgot Cornette was back. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, he would definitely pick up run in that equation. You're absolutely right. I appreciate you reminding me that he was back. Right now, he's in the projections. I didn't forget that he was back earlier, but just in the rundown that I was just doing, I completely forgot that he was there. So yeah, that would potentially, he's 3,900. He's only 32 on DraftKings. If I can find him like mid-teens minutes, that would get him to be interesting. I don't know that we get to that level, though. We'll keep an eye on what the news is around the Celtics, though. But good call. Appreciate that. So Isaac at the top of the board, value play. Kevin Love, also a lot of value at just 3,600 on the DraftKings slate. 1.22 per minute on the season. Damn it, I went away from this Miami team again. It's like the fourth time I've pulled this up during the show. I believe it's right around that rate in this situation for the over the course of the season as well. It's not a huge minutes projection, but Love is one of those kind of guys that in not all that many minutes can put up a decent number. Yeah, in this situation over the course of the season, it's only 114 minutes, 231 possessions, but he's actually jumps to a 1.29 on FanDuel, 1.33 per minute on DraftKings. Again, limited sample size, but it's Kevin Love. We've got an extended sample size over the course of his career for who he is, and who he is around these levels. And for 3,600, if I'm getting 18 to 20 out of him, I'll take that all day on DraftKings. Best point per dollar center on the board by a pretty wide margin. 22.5% win rate, 46% of the top 150. We did get a little bit better of a win rate on Jonathan Isaac. Neither one of these guys has extended minutes, but both of those guys are price driven and good per minute guys. So, in terms of chasing the extreme values like what we were just talking about with McDaniels a minute ago, like 0.65, I do prefer when I can get a very cheap option like this, even if the minutes are a little bit less, in terms of where those per minute numbers go and the trajectory of that on the right night. There's more ceiling there, even in less time. So I really like when I can get to good per minute options like Kevin Love, even with potentially not all that much time. That said, AD looks like a spectacular option as a pay up on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We'll probably get him paired with a fair amount of these guys. 10-1 on DraftKings, 18.35% winner, 21% of the top 150. On FanDuel, did come up lower than his win rate, but still looks fairly strong. And as I've been saying throughout the show, it is one of the few pieces that we're actually ahead of the field on in that Lakers game. His projected ownership for DraftKings that this sim ran against was about 6-ish, 7-ish points lower than that exposure rate. So we're a little ahead of the field on AD with a little room to grow probably. And everybody else from Detroit, LA, I think we want to have shares of, but we don't want to get over the field on. A couple spots down, Jalen Duren right here. 14% winner on DraftKings, 10.6% exposure in our top 150, 7,100. 10% winner on FanDuel, just 5% of the top 150. Sacramento Phoenix, going back to that game, Sabonis, it's such a direct contrast between that game, those two high-end games at the end of the night. Sabonis comes up strong, 8.5% winner on FanDuel, got to him 11% of the time. That is actually under the field, which is interesting, but he does look playable at worst. That might have updated actually since the sim ran. Did I reload this page? I can't remember. It's not far ahead of this. I'm actually surprised that that's a little under the field. He does look good to me though. I think we can get to Sabonis. And then on DraftKings, 11.85% winner, 11.3% of the top 150. That puts him under on DraftKings as well. So he's one of the few pieces from that game that actually came up under the field while also still looking pretty good and being one of the highest points, overall raw points options on the slate one of the higher points per minute guys on the slate. Bam, 1.23 DraftKings points per minute over the course of the season. 1.27 DraftKings points per minute in this situation. It's a fairly healthy sample, 357 minutes, 722 possessions over the course of the entire season. It looks just kind of is who he is though. 9% winner, 8% exposure. Similar on FanDuel, 7% winner. Got to him a little bit more than that, 11%. $9,000 center only. Not a priority on either side, though. Brolo, assuming he plays, looks like who he is. 7,000 on FanDuel, 6,000 on DraftKings, center only on both sites. Round about a point per minute. We don't get a lot less than that. We can get more than that on the right night. But yeah, very, very is who he is. Single digits across the board for Brolo, but playable. Lyles we talked about. Towns we talked about. Chet Holmgren. Look at some of the center-only guys. 1% winner on FanDuel. 0% of the top 150 for 8,300. Just pricing him out of competition with some of the better-looking value spots. Just the way that the slate falls. It's not to say that Chet can't go out there and put up a 50 tonight. He absolutely can. 1.27 per minute on the season. 20.9% usage rate. On DraftKings, a little bit more there in win rate, 2.7%. Just, a couple of the top 150, 74. Same thing. He just gets boxed out by, either we're going higher end or we're going cheapo. Already down and dipping into the single digits here. So yeah, basically everybody has the multi-position eligibility, or is, I guess, Rudy Gobert we didn't talk about. In that low-end Minnesota-Portland game, Rudy looks playable, right around a typical Rudy Gobert level. 81 on FanDuel, 7.3%. Got to him a little bit more. 9.7%. Got to him a little bit more on DraftKings. It's a fair amount of upside for Rudy Gobert against this Portland team. Oh, Nas we didn't talk about either. Nas is only 4,200. Handful of minutes, and that's another one where, we could see a couple additional minutes if certain guys don't go. So right now at 42, he was looking like a decent value. 1.02 per minute on the season. We know there's more per minute depending, situationally for Nas. At 42, that's not bad on DraftKings. At 58 on FanDuel, he's just priced. They just keep him at that, price for when he steps into that good situation run. Otherwise, he becomes a really good play. When he's out there, high usage guy, a lot of run with the second unit. But I think there's good support for him at 42. Even in this situation, like his typical spot, it's not bad. Differentiated guys going down the board. Jalen Williams showing a little bit. I think I talked about him when we were going through the forwards. And then Wendell Carter, center only for 5,600. 18% winner on FanDuel, 16% of the top 150. And Nurk, another piece in Sacramento, Phoenix. Confident this one's going to be ahead of the field. Yep. Solid, single digits, but high single digits ahead of the field, percentage-wise on Nurk shares on FanDuel. I like the win rate. I like the per minute numbers, 1.22 per minute over the course of the season. Put up just 20 and 26 minutes the other night, but has definite ceiling beyond that for just 7,100. And there's a lot of positional flexibility among the big men tonight. On both sites, really. But especially on FanDuel. Especially with Gobert, Bam, not really coming up. They're coming up playable, but not crazy, crazy high priority. Duran comes up as a spot you want to be under the field. All these guys are multi-position. Sabonis multi-position. KP, if he plays, is not coming up great, but multi-position. There are really very, very few center-only guys that you kind of want to prioritize. So actually it makes me like that spot for Nurkic quite a bit. And Wendell Carter as well. 28 minutes, 5,600 is just a very good price. Dollars per minute, in a sense, is sometimes a consideration. I don't think that's bad at all. Nick Claxton with his usual run. It's just priced okay. 7,700 is 1.19 per minute over the course of the season. Definitely capable of doing this any given slate. 42 FanDuel points in 27 minutes the other night. That said, he's come up a lot stronger for us on a lot of other slates and not looking as good across the board on this one. I think it's just a case of getting boxed out by better values because he's not all that high price. Like, it's not a broken price. It's just a correct price for Claxton. So I think he's playable, but not a priority. I like this for FanDuel games, and I definitely like the Nurk one. Neither of those guys particularly relevant on DraftKings. Cat was really the lowest overly relevant piece on DK. At 8,000 with power forward and center eligibility. Again, 5% winner, and we got to him like double that in our top 150. Steven, if you want to do that, sure. Worst case, we can drop it into Discord, but yeah, I can put a little thing on the site with that. That's appreciated, buddy. Mike says, hell yes, that would be excellent for a dummy like me. As Steven points out, it's fairly easy, Mike. So as soon as you see how it's done, you'll say, oh, that's easy. So thank you, Steven. I appreciate that. And obviously, yes, it seems to already have utility, whatever. Let's jump to these sims and take a look at what's going on these in these lineups. Not a lot has changed outside of coming up with some of those questionables. So we should still be relatively relevant in these lineups. Shrink that, close this, move that. Looks like we're good amount of Mike Conley at point as expected. Some of that Cole Anthony super cheap 3,500 is trickling through. Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Durant in that top overall lineup. I like that. Kevin Love and Jonathan Isaac landed in that one in terms of value guys, which is interesting. There's a Giannis share. There's another. Remember when I was saying that the Giannis lineups tend to hit toward the top of the board, even if they come up few and far between. Look how many are up in the top half of the top 150. More justification for, again, 12%, 15% Giannis puts you significantly ahead of the field, at least in the projected ownership that this sim was run against. And that looks like the correct position to be on Giannis for DK. We are taking a good balance in some of these lineups with some of those like mid-price guys that were, mid-price guys in terms of the stars, right? In terms of like 7s and 8s and so forth. This one's got Jalen, Nurk, KD, and then Dunk Robinson value, a Kez value, Hero value, three members of the Heat, and then Mike Conley at his 50 whatever mid-level price. Oh, and Aja Thompson in that one. Forgot we had this extra column over here. Oh, there's another Giannis. So Giannis and KD in that top lineup. Damn, I like this lineup. This is Giannis, KD, De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Love and Jonathan Isaac as values. McDaniels, who might not play. That would be bad for that lineup, obviously. Malik Monk, Cole Anthony, who is an extreme value on that slate. That is an interesting lineup. Brolo being in this one is a little bit of an outlier. But fairly good balance. Like, this is one of those, like 2 values and a handful of balanced high-end guys, or just like you can across the board balance it almost. Like that second one doesn't really have Derek White, Mikal Bridges, Dunk Robinson is like your biggest value play there. Naz Reid, another value-oriented guy. Brolo, Conley, LeBron, Bradley Beal. That lineup is balanced as hell. Same thing for that next one, really. That one's got a Kez in it, a little bit more. Slow-mo, I guess. There's a Troy Brown. Yeah, these are interesting. I was expecting a little bit more, I guess, Starsy Scrubsy looking. And maybe it is just, price-wise, with Cole Anthony being in the threes, with Dunk being very cheap. So maybe it is price-wise a little bit more Starsy Scrubsy than it seems on just name recognition-wise. But these are pretty good lineups. These are interesting. I like this a lot. Conley, Hero, Jalen, Giannis, Kevin Love, value, Malik Monk, Dunk Robinson, Keegan Murray. That's not bad. Trying to think of a good angle into this outside of just like the players that we talked about are coming up pretty aggressively. Because positionally there's a lot of movement, right? Like you could take value up to the mid-range, but you can also get an SGA creeping in there. There's not a lot of SGAs. There's another one, but there's not a ton of them. So I think point guard looks like value to mid, like Derek White, Mike Conley kind of level, Cam Thomas kind of level. The names that are right here. This is kind of obvious. Shooting guard. I was going to say shooting guard and it's like shooting guard and one other spot that you mostly want to be going. And maybe it's just both guard spots that are both kind of falling into value up to mid. But Jaylen Brown's here a lot, and I guess he's kind of mid-priced. He's here at both of these. And these are essentially the same position, shooting guard and small forward at this point too. Probably like between point guard, shooting guard, small forward, 2 out of 3 guys should be from the middle down to the value tier, and then one of the guys can get spendy, like Jaylen Brown is a little bit spendy. Franz Wagner is a little bit spendy. Drew Holiday, a little bit. Cam Thomas, a little bit. SGA, obviously, is a big price. So I think that's how you want to orient there. Power forward, you're kind of going mostly extremes. Jonathan Isaac value, Nas value. Murray's like in the middle, but Isaac again, Akez is value. Or you're going Giannis, Tatum. So it looks like a value star, power forward. Value or star, well, because this is a not overly expensive Bam, Kevin Love. Looks like more value mid-oriented again in center. Guard, again, obviously you can take these guys and put them over here and these guys and put them over here, and it doesn't really matter, and they bounce back and forth as we go through these lineups. But guard just looks like it kind of balances against what I just said about the position. It looks like a fourth spot in that equation. So maybe it's truly 2 and 2 across point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and guard. And then it does look like we get a little bit spendy room at forward or util. KD, Giannis, LeBron, Bradley Beal. This one's a little bit more value-oriented, but you get Cat. Same thing, but you get some bonus. So it's really just a matter of where you're positioning the guys. But there's a lot of room to swap these values around the board, both positionally, just a ton of multi-position today, and a lot of guys who are just really well-priced in terms of either creating a lot of value for their points per dollar number or just a guy like Conley who's just correct and just looks pretty good if he goes out there and does his thing. Kind of like how these lineups are coming together. Tizzle's here showing up late. What's going on, bud? Asking, do we like Cade and Fox at 78 and 8K seem too cheap? So Cade was coming up with a decent win rate, but we were getting below the field in terms of our exposure in the top 150, just like how to position it against the field. If you're building one lineup, absolutely fine to play Cade Cunningham, and it is a good option, projects out for a decent win rate. But his exposure levels, by the Sims, were coming up a little bit to trend below, and that was true for everybody in that LA Detroit game except for Anthony Davis. Everybody was coming up as looks okay, looks good, looks playable, can go out there and score a bunch of points, but want to be below the field on. AD came up a little bit ahead of the field. And then by contrast, everybody in that Sacto game except for Sabonis basically came up as you want to be ahead of the field. And Sabonis still looks like a strong play, and you can get to around the field on him. But De'Aaron Fox looked like somebody we want to be ahead of the field on. So I like Fox better than I like Cade on both sites, and the sims support that. But I do think there's room for Cade if you want it. If you're building one lineup, if you're building 10 lineups, it looks like you said you're building 10 lineups. I don't know that I would want like 10 of 10 Fox, but I would want more Fox, 6 to 8 Fox maybe in 10 lineups. Probably 6 to 7 is probably what I should have said there. And then probably like half that of Cade if you want to play Cade. I do think there's upside. If I were building 10 lineups, I'd probably drop him into like 1 or 2 of them. He just wasn't as big a priority for me as some of the other guys. And by the way, DraftKings lineups are on the screen in front of you, and we're not seeing a lot of Cade. We're also not seeing a lot of Fox. Unless he's hiding over here. Who we are seeing is a little bit more of bonus. There's a Fox. There's a Fox. Yeah, not a ton of Cade. Yeah, Fox was 19%. This is on the sheet. Fox came up at 19% of the top 150 against a 12.79% win rate. And Cade was right here. Just a 4% exposure rate, but like I was saying, that's against a 12% win rate. So in fewer lineups, you can still say, like, there's 12% winner there. I can not worry so much about the field because I'm not building out a full portfolio of lineups. So at that point, it does kind of just become a personal preference question because it is obviously, a good player with decent upside. So what I'm saying is if you wanted to play him in a good handful of those lineups, it's perfectly fine. Yeah, Fox we looked at that, Steven, when we talked about it. Fox was trending down, but he's also priced down for it. So that was why he was not coming up quite as popular, though. And I've got him he's been at 1.11 over the last 30 days. For the season, it's in the 1.2s, 1.23 last year. The number on the sheet that I'm looking at on the projection spreadsheet, the number that just tells me what their season-long rate has been so I can match rates across columns wasn't updated today. It doesn't matter. But that was 1.22. I think it's 1.26 for the season, if I'm remembering what we said earlier. And again, over the last 30 days, dipped to 1.11. I've just got him at 1.13, and he was showing a little bit of value there. Yeah, he was, like I just broke down, 12.7% win rate, 19% exposure on DraftKings for 8,000, just cheap. And then just a 4.7% win rate on FanDuel, but got to him 8.6% of the time in the top 150. So we might see him in these top end of the top 150 again. But yeah, has been in a little bit of a dip over the last 30 days. Where did that go? Did I close it? I'm dumb. FanDuel lineups popping onto the screen momentarily. Here we go. Some of those Portland guys hit the board a little bit there. Jeremy Grant, Matty Thybulle. Doesn't look like any kind of overly relevant shares. Dame, good amount of Dame. We liked getting over the field on Dame on FanDuel and getting over the field on Giannis on DraftKings in terms of that Milwaukee game from the Stars, and this is supporting that. Dame and Conley look like a great pairing. Dame and Monk at the point guard. FanDuel, it looks like we're getting pretty decent spend at the point guard at both point guards. All right, spend to mid-range. Conley being one of the lower points. Simons. But not a lot of super cheap guys. Monte Morris might be the cheapest one that I'm seeing in this top 20 whatever. Fairly spendy at the point on FanDuel. A lot of support for all the guys we talked about. Cade Cunningham, by the way, looks a little bit better here on the FanDuel slate. but he had a 17% win rate on FanDuel, but we ended up with him just 7% of the time against the field in the top 150. Dunk, just a value on both sites. That said, we've got good options at the shooting guard spots as well. Jalen and Cam Thomas, Dunk Devin Booker, Kevin Huerter Devin Booker, Hero Beal. Like these combos. There's some Troy Brown creeping in on the FanDuel side also. It's going to be a problem. Jay Crowder also getting up there. I don't love that. Matty Thibault. I got to check Thibault now. Yeah, we didn't hit Thibault as I was going down that board, but 6.9% winner on DraftKings, 3% of the top 150 for 4,000 shooting guard small forward. FanDuel, he's a small forward only for 46. 13.3% winner, 14.6% of the top 150. He is an extreme low usage guy. 0.71 FanDuel points per minute, 0.65 DraftKings points per minute, and 10% usage for the season. One of the lowest overall usage marks for any kind of guy who gets reasonable run. Plays 23 minutes a night over their first 50 games. Played 29 minutes the other night, put up 15.9 FanDuel points. That's actually within his range of expectations. That's well within his range of expectations. So major, major asterisk on any kind of Matty Thibault. He did end up coming through a little bit. Looks like we're extracting a good amount of value plays out of the small forward spot. Jeremy Grant is a little higher end than some of these guys, but like Caleb Martin, Troy Brown, Jay Crowder is an extreme value on FanDuel. Mikal Bridges obviously not in that equation. Rui, Jaime Quez, Jalen obviously not. Maybe it's more 1-1 because we got Jalen here, Grant there, Bridges. So yeah, it's basically 1-1 at small forward on FanDuel. 1-1 at power forward, it looks like. Although you can go 2. Actually, yeah, most of these top ones are 2. I started down here. McDaniels Barnes, Lyles DFS. Almost exclusively center-only types at the center spot. So definitely looks like we're spending more universally at the 4 guard spots on FanDuel. We're getting more of our value, but we have at least 1, if not 2, depending on how it breaks down. Mid-range toward up to I know I saw a KD share in here somewhere. Maybe not. Yeah, so I guess it's, well, we got the Tatum and the Brown shares in there, so we'll go to that level. You get at least 1 of those guys across forward, if not 2. And then center, it looks like we're firmly either taking a Kevin Love value option, or we're getting our Nurk shares, our Brolo shares, our Gobert shares. Some Sabonis. Nurk I really like. I think that's a good option for FanDuel. Zinger out. All right. That's a good point to punch out because it's also 6:05. Hour and 48-minute show. Jeez. And to think I was going to do a short one today. You guys make it fun. I also rambled my way through that show. Let me punch out here. We're basically through everything we needed to talk about anyway. I'll get the projections updated on the site, get some lineups built, and we will wind things down, watch some basketball, get some dinner. That's about it, gang. Good luck out there tonight. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Jump into the Discord. Links in the chat somewhere. Enough said. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll do this all over again. See you guys.